Who is a Hindu? A Hindu is a person who thinks this is the land of his ancestor. Who is a Hindu? If a person thinks that this is the land of his food and clothing and festivals, is a Hindu. Who is a Hindu? Then, because of this invasion, pan-Islamic invasion, he put in the last clause that this will be your land of your faith as well. And then they asked him, what about Buddhists? He said, they're Hindus. Jains, Hindus. Sikhs, he said, the biggest Hindus because they have defended our land for centuries. Then he says, Muslims. He says, yes, they are, provided that they have their faith here in a mosque or a dargah.
Who Veer Savarkar was, why it is essential for us to know. Rahul Gandhi recently, he said that Veer Savarkar was a Maafi Veer.
And I started getting angry about the fact that you've reduced a man, ruling ideology of our political structure as well, and just to malign that particular party, they are attacking the man who kind of coined the Hindutva. Na rok saka Gora, na rok saka Kalapani, or na rok saki Indian National Congress. Today he is more relevant in our country than ever before.
Your trailer, which was released about 12-15 days ago, says the English under the British India wanted to build a colossal, you're drawing parallels to Mughal Empire.
Extreme acts of violence in Mopla, ISIS flag was on rooftops.
Your marriage made more headlines as compared to Cricket World Cup. Staying in Manipur or staying in Bombay? Wearing specs like Savarkar or wearing shades like the way you do? For more than 70 years out of the 75 years of India's independence, this country was hoodwinked into believing that Veer Savarkar had little role in giving the freedom movement a push. It's about the concerted efforts that the current ruling BJP party at the center made aware the efforts of Veer Savarkar. Not many in this country have also had the cheek to enter into the territory which this filmmaker, this director, this writer, and this brilliant actor who has had the trappings of the brilliant Jat that he comes from the land of the Jat land, Haryana, to understand what he means by this movie and also to understand the essence of this movie. We are joined by none other than Randeep Hooda himself this evening in the national capital of Delhi. What prompted this move to show us who Veer Savarkar was and why it is essential for us to know?
Well, it started from the fact that I also did not know much about him. And I was offered this part as an actor. And me being a history buff thought that, hey, I know. But then I thought I only know Veer Savarkar, Kalapani and whatever little names that are being attached to him these days. So I read further that why is it that we don't know about him? And then I read up about him, and he was a part of the Sashastra Kranti or armed revolution that happened. Then I tried reading about armed revolution in a lot of history books written by a certain bracket of people. And the armed revolution only had a paragraph or two about them, and these people were also there. They tried, but nothing happened.
You're talking about the history textbooks in this
History
country or outside?
textbooks and history books, like proper books by historians. And then it raised a question that if these people did not do or contribute much to our country's independence struggle, then why were there so many of them hung and sent to prisons like Kalapani, which are horrendous examples of colonial atrocity, or, tied in front of cannons and blasted off if they had no part to play?
Right.
So then I went further, and then I started reading more about the armed revolution, some articles and archival material. And then then I started reading Mr. Savarkar. He's a prolific writer, complicated writer. You start a sentence, and by the time you finish it, you have to read it again because it's so damn long.
Right.
And then there are other books, like Vikram Sampath's book was very enlightening. So was Purandare's book was very enlightening, more anecdotal. Then I met a lot of people from Maharashtra, Nashik and all that, and talked to them even more. And then slowly I came across a whole plethora of individuals like Chapekar brothers, like Anant Kanhare, like Madanlal Dhingra. And then I was like, hey, what's going on? Shamji Verma, Madam
Ji.
Kama,
Right.
Lala Hardayal.
Right.
So there are so many people who were a part of a movement which essentially felt that there are only a handful of Britishers in our country and we could, beat them and kill them and drive them away, scare them away. So when I came across this, then I started getting angry about the fact that you've reduced a man whose ideology is right now the ruling ideology of our political structure as well. And just to malign that particular party, they are attacking the man who kind of coined the Hindutva. So I took it upon myself, almost as an act of vengeance on the part of Mr. Savarkar, to go ahead and tell his story with a heightened sense of cinema. Not just a documentary-ish feeling or that staid biopics that usually we make, which is more of a glorification and lecturing and whitewashing. I put him on the dock like he was. And he was a complicated person. And he had so many facets to his life that I could not even put it in a web series if I was to make on him.
Right.
He was a prolific writer, poet. He was an ideology former. He was a opinion changer. He was an influencer of his times. And he had the ability to convince people. That is why he was the most dangerous man.
Convince people
of a certain way of thinking, a certain way of following things that he believed in. So then I came across this whole network of secret societies that existed in Europe, in America, in Bengal province, in Punjab, in Bombay presidency, in Madras presidency,
right,
who were all in touch with each other, who were, smuggling guns across the seas and bringing bomb manuals into India and writing threatening letters to the kings in their fiefdoms and writing letters to the British Indians in the British Army. So let's come together and let's create another revolution like 1857. I was myself taught in school the Sepoy Mutiny of 1857.
Right.
But because he changed the point of view in 1907, he says 1857 was the first war of Indian independence.
Right.
And it changed the entire generations that came after him, because he's written it with a lot of research from English archival footages and written it in such a fervor, such a patriotic language that stirs you up. That one book became the Bible. I shouldn't say Bible in Savarkar's case, but became a Bible for all armed revolutionaries that followed. HSRA, which is the Hindustan Socialist Republican Association,
right,
which Azad Saab was the boss of it, and Bhagat Singh was a part of it. Rajguru was sent by Vinayak's brother over there. Right. So you could not enter that organization or be a part of that organization unless you read that book.
Right.
Then in the Indian National Army, you've given a uniform, fleet, a blanket, a gun, and this book. So nobody has paid attention to it, or it has obviously been brushed under the carpet. And today I was thinking that there is an international court of justice that is going on for Palestine and Israel.
Right.
His case was there in 1910. There was...
For having been sent to gallows twice?
No, for he jumped the ship through a porthole from the bathroom off the coast of Marseille in France and swam and released the land. And he tried to run in many directions, but then he found some French policemen there. So he caught hold of them and he says, arrest me. I'm a political fugitive, while he was being sent to India for punishment. So because he was arrested from French soil by a country, Britain, who does not have an extradition treaty.
Right.
So there was a whole, between Germany, France, England and America, there was a commission that was put in Hague court.
Right.
And obviously, there was some understanding that happened. His case was taken to Winston Churchill, and he said, "Why just throw him to the French? Why do you need him?" Then he was briefed that these people were going to blow up the British Parliament. These people are going to do this. These people are smuggling guns. This, that. He said, "Then why are you sending him back? Because here he'll have rights.
Right.
There he'll be a native, and we can do whatever we want." He went on to endure unbelievable kind of persecution of colonial era in the hellhole of Kalapani.
The fact that you mentioned, of course, that the Brits were scared of the fact that he's going to blow up their parliament and then he's going to face the rights issue and then seek protection there. It was more appropriate for them to send him back to India.
But it was not, they were sending him back to India because in England, if he came to France, his son died after Madan Lal Dhingra and had killed Lord Curzon Wyllie, which was the first political assassination to have happened in Britain.
Right.
He was the head of secret services in London, and he was the guy who had investigated and turned in so many people. He was the guy who was the governor of Bengal when the first partition in 1905 happened over religion.
Right.
So he was a guy they wanted to bump off. So they bumped him off. And then he came to France where Madame Kama and Shyamji Varma were there. And then he went back to get arrested because he felt that we are not reaching, our revolution is not reaching people. So he said and the Congress always calling them coward and all that because these people are resorting to violence. Right. So he went back to England, but they did not try him. Because if they tried him there, it would have been a punishment of 3 years.
Right.
And he would have gotten out.
Right.
But they put him on a fugitive act and sent him back to India, where he was given 2 life imprisonments. And I often wondered, why did they not hang him? Because his influence through his books and his writings and his organized secret societies was something that would have gotten galvanized to another level.
Right.
So they kept him there.
Right.
And he was going to get released in 1960, by the way, when they put him in there. A 27-year-old man, a boy rather, in today's terms, gone to this horrible place to be released after 50 years. It's unimaginable.
Rahul Gandhi recently, about a few months ago, he said that Veer Savarkar was a Maafi Veer. The letters often quoted by the Congress, of course, bring his struggle, a contribution to freedom struggle, to almost zero. Why do you think that this term, which Mr. Gandhi or others, the dynasty politics which India has seen over the last 70 years or so, or for that, the opposition parties, made him call?
I always felt this deeply, that if you're being ruled by the same family in some form or the other over the years, it's an it's like the British Crown, It's autocracy, that's what we call it. Maybe he should listen to his grandmother, who written a great epitaph for Mr. Savarkar, and issued a stamp in his name, called him a brave man who contributed immensely to the freedom struggle, and who was a big part of the nation building. Right. when he passed away. I think it's because that party is losing electoral might, and the party that's left them behind or overpowered the power of the country has Hindutva as one of their main ideologies. So in order to attack them, he's attacking uninformedly Mr. Savarkar, because he was the one who coined Hindutva as a political ideology.
Right. While on one hand, the Congress is undertaking the Bharat Jodo Yatra to ostensibly unite this country, I find it very surprising, and I also feel it very awkward to see Mr. Gandhi, the scion of such a powerful family, to attack Savarkar. What is it that you make of the mercy petition, which has often been talked about in this country as something that he apologized and he grovelled before the British government to seek life?
First of all, my one question to them is, if he wrote these mercy petitions, then why did they keep him in captivity for 27 years and not the people he's mentioning? Why was that? Simple, lies your answer. But to simplify it for your audience, it was called a bail petition,
Right.
which were termed as mercy petitions. And he was himself a lawyer,
Right.
and he wrote it for not just him, but a lot of other people.
Hmm.
And they were all let go from Kalapani, other political prisoners,
Right.
except for him and his brother.
Right.
Right? And then in all of these letters, he always said, if releasing me is stopping you from this act of generosity and goodwill, I may be exempted from it. They skip that part. Right?
Right.
And then they come to the language, yours, your humble servant. I remember he read this. So in those days, to address the court or the government, this was the language. I have seen letters in Johannesburg written by Mahatma Gandhi, which used the same language. Right? It was a language that people in those days used. Even in today's, in our class, when they used to teach us how to write applications, we write in the end, yours sincerely, yours this. In those days, in that era, and that era's English, the colonial English language that they had, this was a normal way to end a letter. Right? And also, he was a very smart man. Sam, dam, dand, bhed, kuch bhi karke, he has to get out of there. He was a man who had a lot of intellectual strength, who had a lot to give the country, had a lot of will to contribute to the country, to not only politically revolutionary, even towards the society.
Right.
And he felt he was wasting his life at a very young age in a place which was just a hellhole.
How hurt you feel when such misgivings or the misnotions are being pointed and appointed upon a man on whom you are making this film?
It's just a political statement that they are trying to make to run down a person of his stature. And it's not only him. The Indian national, first the British tried to do it to him, and then Indian National Congress, and this Congress is obviously different. Indian National Congress was the body at that time which was a liaison body formed between the English-educated natives and the imperialists to avoid the unrest of armed revolution. When partition happened, there were three major parties in the country: the Muslim League, the Hindu Mahasabha, and the Indian National Congress.
Correct.
Now the Indian Muslim League went to Pakistan.
Right.
And Savarkar Sahab was accused without judicial proof in Mahatma Gandhi's assassination. First, a letter came which was that do not arrest Mr. Savarkar unless there is judicial proof.
Correct.
Then there was a meeting that happened. And after that, it said even if there is no judicial proof, his history and ideology says he might have done it. They arrested him on that.
On conjecture.
And eventually they could not prove a connection of his to the conspiracy, forget his involvement or any thing. They tried to turn around and intimidate the witnesses. It's all known record. Godse himself said that if he had gone to Savarkar Sahab, he would have refused for him to do it. And accusing Mr. Savarkar, the headlines all across the world and India read, Mahatma Gandhi killed by a Hindu.
Right.
Hindu, Marathi Hindu assassinates.
Right.
So they vilified the Hindu Mahasabha.
Right.
Which got almost disseminated after that. And they won unopposed in 1952.
Right.
As a thing.
Right.
Why was it a threat? Because lakhs of Hindus had come from Pakistan to India.
Right.
And they had all seen the atrocities and the madness that happened at partition, which was under Indian National Congress's watch. So it was quite likely that they would have been voted out, because the first time they were just selected. There was no election.
Absolutely.
All the white sahibs left, the brown sahibs took over. The guilty and the people who loved him also, adored him also, who would not publicly acknowledge him when he died, lakhs of people turned up to his funeral. Seeing that, they put a Kapoor Commission, which was a non-judicial inquiry, which again said the sword of doubt hangs over his head. No matter what you have tried, na rok saka Gora, na rok saka Kalapani, or na rok saki Indian National Congress. Today, he's more relevant in our country than ever before.
Your trailer, which was released about 12-15 days ago, says the English under the British India wanted to build a colossal You're drawing parallels to Mughal Empire. Today, many in the West are also fighting the threat of the jihad or the Islamist fundamentalism. It is not just restricted to India alone. It has now spread to most parts of Europe, large parts of Africa, and also, of course, the US and UK. Do you actually believe that today the threat of Islam is more dangerous than any other religion in this country?
It was at Mr. Savarkar's time. So if I come from his point of view, what had happened is that at that time there was a movement that was started in 1920 by two brothers from Raebareli, Ali brothers from Raebareli, and they started this caliphate movement, which was basically to restore the power of the caliph of the Ottoman Empire at the end of the World War One, when Ottoman Empire was defeated by the forces, the apex forces.
Ji.
These two brothers from Raebareli started saying, you have to restore the power of the caliph, otherwise we are not going to cooperate with the government. And a lot of government jobs were held by the Muslim community. They were not ready for democracy. They were not joining the Indian National Congress because they felt when the British came, it was a sultanate, and when they leave, it should be a sultanate.
Right.
Some leaders, not
Right.
all Muslims. We should not classify them as that.
Right.
And Gandhiji, to involve them in the democratic process of getting into democracy, he became the president of the Caliphate movement and modified it to call it Khilafat, which means opposition. So he tried to kill two birds with one stone. But as a result of that, there were extreme acts of violence in Mopla, in Malabar, where the ISIS flag, the Caliphate flag, was on rooftops. And thousands of Hindus were killed. And Gandhiji did not react to that well, or did not condone them, because he wanted them to be in the Indian National Congress to fight for the democracy. So he was trying to put the country together in that sense. But in that process, Indian National Congress started the policy of appeasement. They were given all of a sudden separate electorates. Why were they not given to the Sikhs or the Parsis or the Anglo-Indians or other things? To the Jains, the Buddhists, he gave it to them.
Right.
And then they also gave them a higher percentage of seats in the provisional government,
Right.
which led to more asking more, giving more, and ultimately it led to the formation of an Islamic State of Pakistan. Now, at that moment, there was a telegram that went from these Ali brothers to the Caliph, to the Amir of Afghanistan. A new guy had come in, I don't remember his name exactly, that come invade Delhi, British week, make it a sultanate. So there was an absolute threat of a pan-Islamic invasion. Most of the soldiers at that time were Muslims. So Mr. Savarkar, after going through the persecution from the Pathan warders in Kalapani and seeing this thing, he felt that what if there is an attack on us in the name of religion? Would these people fight for the religion, or would they fight for their country? That was a big threat at that time. And that is when he came up with the policy, with the ideology of Hindutva, which basically says that Hindutva is a political, cultural, and civilizational identity. It does not belong to a religion. Whoever loves Hind, which is from Indus River to the Bay of Bengal, is a Hindu, no matter what religion, what caste, or what community they belong to.
Right.
So he put three things. Who is a Hindu?
Right.
A Hindu is a person who thinks this is the land of his ancestors. If a person thinks that this is the land of his food and clothing and festivals, he's a Hindu. Then, because of this invasion, pan-Islamic invasion, he put in the last clause that this will be your land of your faith as well. As long as you consider that, you are a Hindu. So they asked him, so how would you know? He says, why don't you take a book of Shakespeare and a book of Rabindranath Tagore to any part of this subcontinent? They will all say that Rabindranath Tagore's book is mine. Why would they say that? And then they asked him, what about Buddhists? He said, they're Hindus. Jains, Hindus. Sikhs. He says, the biggest Hindus, because they have defended our land for centuries. Then he says, Muslims. He says, yes, they are. They can be Hindu as well, provided that they have their faith here in a mosque or a dargah. So this he was very clear about. And he's also accused of a two-nation theory, which was actually proposed by I think on British coaxing him by Sayyid Ahmad Khan Sahab, who was the founder of the Aligarh Muslim University.
I would just lighten up the conversation.
Thanks.
Last year, of course, I mean, when most of us were following the cricket extravaganza, your marriage made more headlines as compared to Cricket World Cup, maybe even more than the Manipur crisis. But I want to understand from you, when you wrote taking a leaf out of Mahabharat, where Arjun married Manipuri warrior princess Chitrangada.
There was a big debate about this as well in Manipur, that this Chitrangada belonged to Tripura or
Or
something.
Arunachal Pradesh.
Yeah, so there's a big thing going on. But I felt that it is only becoming, in our culture, we go and get married at the girl's house. So I felt it was only becoming of me to go and honor her culture, family, and that, and her. And I also was surprised, as was my family and few friends that went with me over there, about the following of Hinduism that they do at that level. We Jats are very Arya Samaji. Her brother Manikanta Laishram said after the wedding on the mic that only Jats could have come and married at this time in Manipur. But yeah,
because they're more daring.
Probably foolhardy.
You took a decision to sort of marry someone in Manipur. How personally gratified you feel to have taken a step that this is acceptable in a Haryana society as well?
I mean, I did not think of that point at all, because I'm an individual and marriage is a choice of individual, and it should not be mistaken as. But only the poor get affected by the Khap Panchayats. It's not really anyone else.
Okay.
With all due respect, marriages don't happen between two individuals. It happens between two families.
Ji.
And if the two families are okay with it, and if the people getting married are okay with it, it's nobody else's business to interfere in it. But I did not even think of this. I just went about it. For many years, I had felt that I'd also going to get married to a Jat girl, but those ideas flew out of the window because I did not have a government job.
No, I mean, of course. But coming back to government jobs, many feel that in Haryana there is still a culture that when there is a birth of a boy, they either want to send him to Indian Army or to.
It's also a government job.
It's also a government job. So how difficult or easy it was for you to convince your parents, since your father is a medical doctor, to stay away from these government jobs, and then
I did get into the army. I wanted to go there, and a lot of my classmates went there, are there. 2-3 of them have already martyred. So my father felt that since my classmates were sons of mostly farmers and teachers and stuff like that, he felt that, okay, they are going to the army. And he asked me, why do you want to go to the army? I said, I want to serve the country. He says, if all of you go join the army, there are who's going to serve the country in other ways? Like, why don't you become a lawyer or a judge or something like that, and contribute to the country and society? I overslept, and I am contributing to the country and society now, which I would not have been not in this way that I would have been able to do it.
I also vividly recollect, I think probably I was at Captain Amrinder's press conference during those days in 2016.
Saragadi, when I came dressed
where you had come dressed, it was a launch of his book, I believe.
Yes, on Saragadi.
I was there at that event on that day when you came. Although, of course, the movie could not hit the theatres.
Yeah.
It was a different, but your dream of serving the army, or your father's dream of serving the army, almost came fulfilled. When you were dressed
of course.
up as.
Although I have not, except for that movie which did not really fructify, I have not had the opportunity to play an army person. Though every army personnel I meet think that I would be very suited for it. But that's just life.
Having said that, you also have, of course, played a lot of inspirational roles on the celluloid as well. For instance, your role in Sultan, when you try to inspire Salman, albeit limited role, but brings a very emotive and inspirational line for many a fighter in this country, whether from the army or from other professions. Hero वो होता है जो हारता है क्योंकि वो जानता है जीतने की असली value. That personally inspired me a lot. You think that Savarkar fits that role, or is there someone else also in this country who fits the bill?
I am definitely one of those people. I think success is just going from from failure to failure without losing enthusiasm.
You remember this line?
Yes, of course, I remember that line. Cinema is not only there to entertain, it's also there to inspire. But you can only inspire if you can engage and entertain people. Nobody wants to come to cinema and listen to a lecture about independence or Desh Bhakti. That is why I've made this movie in a way which is more friendly to younger audience because of the way I've made it, the techniques, the music, and my cutting and all that. And I've put a tilted up, larger than life thing to the entire thing.
Right.
And I purposely, when I started, I thought that, only way to make a difference is to have people wear Mr. Savarkar's t-shirt like they wear Bhagat Singh's t-shirt or Che Guevara's t-shirt to college. That would cause a change.
Right. Your film also brings us tragic memories of an unfortunate death of a man whose then girlfriend was in sort of a relationship, Ankita Lokhande. Of course, I mean this movie features her. How easy or difficult it was to work with?
It was just like any other actor I worked with, though I did coax her a couple of times about her memory to evoke a strong emotion. But apart from that, it was a good experience working with her, and I think she'll be proud of this performance. I think it's her best performance till date, and I was very hard about it. I won't let her go till she gives me what I conceived it as a character.
Right. We'll wrap up this question by asking you that the famous dialogue from one of your movies, which actually has been very evocative for this country. आज के बाद सुल्तान मिर्जा का नाम सुन के खून नहीं खोला तो ठंडा कर दूंगा सबको. How many Sultan Mirzas in this country you really want to ragdo?
I don't want to ragdo anybody, brother. My job is not to ragdo people. My job is to explore human beings and in an art form where it is to engage people into a conversation. And that is why I made this movie in a way where I leave a question to you, whether Mr. Savarkar was Veer or not. I, in fact, provide you with a lot of facts, obviously dramatized. I'm making a movie, not a documentary. But I keep asking these questions as you go along. And if I'm able to have the audience, when they go back home and think about this movie, even for a little bit, I think I'll be victorious in my quest to bring him to life.
अगर किसी चीज की लत पड़ जाए तो वो आदमी की पहचान बन जाती है. Do you think that you have been able to kick some habit which became inseparable part of your life?
Oh, we sometimes kick them and sometimes they kick us, these habits. But I've tried to, have a good habits of hard work and single-minded focus and the ability to not be pleased with yourself too soon. I'm a bit harsh on myself, I think. I have to correct that. But otherwise, I think it's always a good step to keep questioning who you are and what you're doing and if it is your best.
Okay, we'll do just quick rapid fire. After you retire from the film industry, staying in Manipur or staying in Bombay?
Staying in the jungle somewhere.
Smoking a hookah in the Jharkhand of Haryana or walking on the beaches of Juhu?
Oh, that Jharkhand of Haryana for sure.
Wearing specs like Savarkar or wearing shades like the way you do?
Oh, wearing shades like the way I do, though while shooting Mr. Savarkar, my eyesight has suffered because I was so underweight for so long. That was one of the repercussions of my efforts in this role.
Thank you so much. It was a pleasure knowing you, sir. We wish you all the best with all our might, and we wish that movie brings the image of what Savarkar was 75 years back or more from the annals of history. And we want this movie to bring us the roaring success, which it does. That was Randeep Hooda joining us this evening in the national capital of Delhi. We hope that the movie continues to inspire this country and also ensures that many an Indian who have not been aware of this man get aware of who it was.